Hey everyone, welcome back to the Foundations in Pre-Calculus 10 videos. In this video, we're going to look at Lesson 4 from Chapter 4, which is talking about fractional exponents and radicals. So in our previous video, we looked at what happens when we have a fraction in our exponent when our numerator is 1. So in this video here, we're going to look at what happens when your numerator is not 1. So as we kind of talked about in the last video, our denominator here stands for what the index is of our radical. And so now what happens is that now that we have a number that is not 1 in our numerator, this here stands for your exponent. So when we have a fraction in our exponent, it means that we're dealing with both exponents and radicals. And there are a couple different ways that we can rewrite this number, 64 to the power of 2 over 3. And I'll just show you one way that I prefer. So what I like to do first is that I will write our number with the radical. So I'll write this as the cube root of 64. And then on the outside of this, I'm going to put my exponent. So you can have an exponent of 2 there. So what you do first is you could cube root that answer. So cube root of 64 is 4, and then you can apply your square, and 4 squared is 16. One way that you can also work with this question is where you can write the exponent inside your radical, so you could have the cube root of 64 squared, and then you would just simplify what's inside here first. You would get ultimately to the same answer, but I just prefer to work with the cube rooting and take any kind of radical with a smaller number if that's possible, just because it's a little bit easier for me to do that in my head rather than working with whatever 64 squared is. So I typically prefer this method, but whichever way you prefer is really up to you. As long as you get to the right answer, I'm pretty okay with whichever method you choose. So we're going to look at 2 examples from your notes. This is example 3a and 3b, working with fractional exponents. So here we're going to evaluate 0.01 to the exponent of 3 over 2. So just like we saw in the last example, if it helps you out at all, what I prefer to do is, instead of working with decimals, I like to work with fractions instead. So this is 1/100, so you would write 1 over 100. And then you can write it to the exponent of 3 over 2. Then I'm going to rewrite it as using the method I showed you above. So we're going to start with our index of 2, so that means we're going to square root of that fraction. So 1 over 100. And then on the outside, I'm going to write our exponent here is that numerator, which is 3. So I'm first going to apply that square, the square root, which means I would square root the numerator, square root the denominator. So the square root of 1 is just 1, and the square root of 100 is 10. And then don't forget to write that exponent every single time. So now we can go ahead and apply the exponent. So when we're applying that exponent, it goes both to numerator and the denominator. So 1 cubed is just 1, and then 10 to the power of 3 is 1,000. Also, if you typically get a nice number where you're not rounding in your calculator, say for example this 1 over 1,000, you can also write this as a decimal form, as 0.001. Although I will say that typically if it rounds and if it's a decimal number where you have to round, I would just recommend leaving it as a reduced fraction. So we're going to move on to part B. So here we have negative 27 to the power of 4 over 3. So one thing that's kind of important here is that up to this point, we worked with a lot of, even up to this point in your math career, if you want to call it that, you guys have only worked with positive numbers. But now we're going to be looking at what happens when we have a negative number. So one thing to note is that when we're if we have any radicals that have an even index, you cannot take a square root or the fourth root of a negative number, But you can do that if your index here is odd. So here we have to the power of 3, so this is okay. So I'm going to rewrite our expression here. So we're going to have the cube root of negative 27. And on the outside, I'm going to do the exponent of 4. So now we're going to evaluate the inside of the brackets here. So we have the cube root of negative 27. So you can either do that in your, if you guys can do that in your head or put it into your calculator. You'd essentially want to look for what is a number that I would multiply by itself to get to negative 27. So because it's a negative number inside our radical symbol here, and we know that our number itself is going to be negative. So essentially we want to look at, well, what's the cube root of 27? And that is 3. And then our answer here is, or our radicand here is negative, so my answer here has to be negative. Then we're going to take it to the power of 4. Then we can go negative 3 to the power of 4. Make sure one thing that's really important is if you guys do put this into your calculator, you do need to have your brackets on around the outside of your negative symbol, because some calculators will not apply this negative. You'd end up with a negative answer, when in fact this should be a positive answer. So negative 3 to the power of 4 would give you 81. So watch out here that our answer was in fact positive. So just with that little note here is that if you guys have a even exponent and you were working with negative numbers, you'd end up with a positive number. But if you had a negative number with a negative exponent, you would end up with a negative number. So that is everything here for this video. So if you guys have any questions, make sure to come see me in class or text me on Remind 101. And thank you guys so much for watching.